If anyone jumps in later, so be it. So I'll just kick things off.
Perfect.
And for those of you at home, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Solve Network. Tonight's guest expert is Valerie Jennings, who is an executive coach, and she's going to be speaking about EQ and leadership. I'm really excited to have her on because although we know each other and have worked together in various capacities, there is a lot of what she has an expertise in and a lot of what she's going to talk about tonight that I'm sure is going to be new and different. And although I know a little bit about EQ, I'm really interested to see how it fits into leadership. So without further ado, please take it away, and we'll be doing a discussion, a Q&A after the presentation.
What I'm here to talk to you guys today about is leadership, emotional intelligence, and this great model called radical candor. And so we'll dive into that in a moment. But first, I just wanted to introduce myself. So I'm Val, and I'm an executive coach. I have been coaching since about 2014. I have a long background in the corporate world. I've worked at Cisco. I've worked with a lot of high-tech companies. I've worked in HR, but the majority of my career was spent in supply chain management. So lots of business operations and supply chain experience. And I absolutely love what I do now, working as an executive coach, where I get to combine my business experience, my management leadership experience with the world of coaching. And so I'm so excited to be here and to talk about what I like best and what I get nerdy about. And so why I'm here is, as a management and leadership coach, there's a few things I do. I work with leaders and their teams, and we focus on management and leadership, on their career, and on how to get teams to work together better. As a coach, I really like to look at people as a whole person. So people are their same selves, whether they're at home or at work. And the more we can try to integrate who people are as a leader and at home, kind of that authenticity, the stronger people will be at work and at home. So that's kind of my philosophy about how I work. And today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence and radical candor. And so if we were a big group today, I would have us do a big exercise together. But since we don't, Shane, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. And I'd love for you, since you know me a little bit, what are a couple things, Shane, that you and I have in common?
I think that we're both genuinely interested in not only in people, but in things. And that, especially for this, I would say, it's like, how do teams work? How does this company operate? Like, what are their values? Like, what's their mission? I think we both really enjoy that. But I think we're also very interested in how to kind of make things work better, like finding solutions and providing kind of tips and tools.
Exactly. I think that's how we're alike too. And so we kind of share this same curiosity about how people can work together better and how people can be themselves and really have their best performance. And one of the reasons why I asked you about how we're the same and what we have in common is that that's an example of how we build empathy with other people. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, one of the pillars of emotional intelligence is actually empathy. And one of the ways that we can work on empathy is looking at people through the eyes of, how is this person like me? So this just quick little exercise that Shane and I did together is something that can quickly make us feel like we have something in common. And that's actually a way in which people can build empathy. And so empathy is really, really important. And it's just so ironic. I'll just say today is June 4th. And with everything going on in the world, I cannot emphasize again enough how important empathy is. But empathy is really, really important to leadership. And I wanted to share this quote about empathy from Barack Obama, where he says, "Learning to stand in somebody else's shoes, to see through their eyes, that's how peace begins. And it's up to you to make that happen." So empathy is a quality of character that can really change the world. And when I work with managers and leaders, they want to make impact and change in their employees and in business. And so one of the things that I work with them on as a coach is how to build empathy. So here's another quote about building empathy, which is empathy is about standing in someone else's shoes, feeling his or her heart, seeing with his or her eyes. Not only is empathy hard to outsource and automate, but it makes the world a better place. And so Shane, and those of you listening, I would highly recommend that you look up the work of Daniel Pink. He's one of my favorites. And what I love about this perspective is that when we think about high tech in the world of business, so much is outsourced and automated, but what we can't give to a machine and what we can't code is the sense of being able to empathize with other human beings. And this is really what makes people great leaders and what makes the world a better place. So one more quote really quick on this. Richard Branson, he's the CEO of Virgin Atlantic, and among other things, he says great things can be achieved by leading through wisdom, empathy, and integrity with no other agenda other than humanity. So just being human. So when leaders work with me, one of the things I want to help them develop is a really good sense of empathy, so that they can show their humanity to others. So many leaders get elevated to the point that they're at because they're really good at what they do. They're really good at their technology. They're really good at their craft in business. They have a lot of degrees, but comes a certain point in leadership where so much of the work that leaders do is about influencing and connecting with other people, that this quality of empathy becomes super, super important. And so when we think about emotional intelligence, there's a really great book that I want to introduce you guys to, which I'll talk about in just one second. But there's an intersection of power, or an intersection of greatness, an intersection of wisdom that comes from EQ. So you could say that emotional intelligence is EI, but the way we measure EQ is, well, the way we measure emotional intelligence is EQ. Same with IQ, which is the way we measure intelligence. So this combination of emotional intelligence and the intelligence of intellect is really what makes a leader great. So there's a book that I love. So if you are looking for a new book for your professional development or even your personal development, this is a book that I actually almost always have it on my desk to refer to all the time. I use it a lot with clients and worksheets. But just a little bit to teach you about what EQ is. So there's actually an assessment that you can take. And if it's something that interests you, feel free to reach out and I can help you take the assessment. But it's measured on a 30-point scale, 130-point scale, much like an IQ test. And it measures 15 different competencies. And we're going to talk about 2 of them today. And it also measures the relationship between the competencies. So it's not enough to just be good at one thing at the expense of another. We want our emotions to be balanced. So a good emotional intelligence assessment is going to measure the relationships between competencies. And the good thing about emotional intelligence is that it actually can be learned. So there's research that shows that we can actually develop our emotional intelligence and continue becoming more emotionally intelligent up until our 60s and 70s, whereas IQ is really maxed out at about age 25, 27 when our brain development stops. So EQ is one of these things that's based on experience. You can actually learn to get better at it, which is really important for leaders because in order to maximize their influence and their impact, they need to have really good EQ. So I was talking a little earlier about how emotional intelligence is about balance. So what we're going to dive into today is 2 of, I think, the most critical competencies of emotional intelligence, which are empathy, that we've talked about quite a bit, and assertiveness. So when you take an emotional intelligence assessment, this is one of the things that they look for is how well are you able to balance those 2 things.